Hey, what's going on, everyone? Rorschach with the Game Reactionists. With me, as always.
Spectre,
I
barely
suppose,
here.
yeah, I suppose it's
Uh,
not as always, but on occasion. But hell of a week, huh? Gaming related news. This is an actual news video that we're dropping for anyone that pays
yeah,
attention to
yeah.
that. So we got some big stuff. We got the Polygon being sold off, leading to mass layoffs. We got EA
Which
cutting.
we're very happy to see, of course.
Oh
EA, of
yeah, I
course.
mean,
This is mostly good news all around, I would say. So,
yeah, and then we got EA cutting some jobs, and then Microsoft raises the prices on its hardware and software. So we'll start with the Polygon stuff. I'm just reading through this article from Kotaku, which I'd imagine is next on the chopping block. So I figure I'll give them the the last little bit of traffic they probably get anymore at this point anyway. But it looks like they were sold off to a company called Valnet, and we got all these people posting how they're no longer with Polygon. If they're hiring, please consider the talented writers. Every one of them deserves a spot on your staff. Which I don't think I agree with.
no, not the least. I mean, Polygon. I mean, it, everyone understands, especially in 2025 now after how many years of dealing with them. They're synonymous with this. Pushing this agenda, this. I hate to keep relying on the woke term, but this narrative, this agenda that's been the cornerstone of their message for years and years and years now. So yeah, it's nice to see the ship is sinking finally for them, and yeah, hopefully Kotaku's soon to follow as well too. I mean, it's gaming journalism is I think we could effectively say is dead, which is we could say rest in piss at this point because I don't think anyone's gonna miss it. It's
No,
we once upon a time going way back to when we were children, like going back 20, 30 years. It was something different. It had its own kind of flair and culture to it, and we all had our magazine that we subscribed to, and
yeah,
it was a whole different animal back then. But really, something I'd say after the 2010-ish era or so, or really going back, I think the eye opener for me was the whole Kane and Lynch situation. That was the
yeah,
eye opener situation for me. But ever since then, more or less, it's been co-opted by these causes, and it's basically become a political rag at this point. So good riddance, and a lot of the comments I saw on Twitter about it were just a lot of like goodbye, to hell with you, stuff like that. It was like like attaboy, like glad they're gone, glad they're dead.
hmm
I saw some guy posted that there's that scene from 1989 Batman where Jack Nicholson says the Joker is like, I'm glad you're dead.
yeah,
Just like
yeah.
I'm like that was my thoughts exactly. I'm glad you're dead.
Yeah, when I
you
heard
know.
this, I was just like, well, you reap what you sow. I mean, you put out a bunch of trash content with a bunch of trash articles. You try to politicize the hobby for, I mean, really the better part of over a decade at this point. And you're seeing a pushback. There was an update as of today from the SVP, where he's talking about how he pitched what would become Polygon to Sports Blog Inc. And how he went through the deck and basically showed them what it could be. Now the same company, now they're called Vox Media, sold them to Valnet, and the press proudly calls Polygon a premium gaming publication. I don't know what the hell that means. But I guess Valnet refused to meet with this SVP or answer a single question of his. They were incurious about how a gaming publication could become premium. And he's hoping that the remaining Polygon team gets a chance to continue the work we all cared about so much. But somehow this is the end of my journey. Now, I'm not going to sit here And I'm not going to say that I'm happy that people lost their jobs. You know, I don't believe that every single one of these people losing their jobs are an enemy of the hobby. You know, I got to imagine, you know, at least even a small amount of them were just truly dedicated to their craft. But when you adopt unpopular ideas and when you chastise your demographic essentially for years, this was going to happen. This was always going to happen. And they weren't really acting in good faith, like I said, for a very long time. And so, yeah, it's rest and piss at that point. Reap what you sow. I want to.
Yeah, I think you give them a lot more credit than I would. I think they I mean, in terms of them losing their jobs and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it's from a personal life standpoint, obviously that's gonna be a big negative for them. But I mean, I think if the shoe was on the other foot here, they'd be celebrating. Anything, any kind of negativity they could throw our way. Or,
that's not lost on me.
Perceive as their enemy.
Yeah, that's not lost on me.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not gonna sit here. I don't know any of these people, so I have no reason to have any animus toward them personally. But it's just, maybe these people, when they head home after they've turned in their laptops and got whatever severance, if there is even a severance, maybe they do some self-reflection and realize, okay, well, we fucked up. How can we be better? Is that even an option?
Yeah, I think we almost should just go through on on X and just go through with their history here. And I think your sympathy would probably it would rapidly decline.
I'm sure
as you look at some of their posts, I'm sure it just would be but we don't need to give them any more airtime than they already have.
I would use sympathy with like a fine grain of salt. Just a very, very fine grain of salt. And speaking of the woke thing, talking about a rejection, I didn't know this, but apparently the developers of Lords of the Fallen, as we know, they re-released Lords of the Fallen, I guess in 2023. I thought it was last year. And I've never... Did you play the re-release of Lords of the Fallen at all?
No, it was something I was actually really close to getting, but changed my mind on it at the last minute. I did play the original Lords of the Fallen, which was a Souls-like-esque type of game. I thought it was very mediocre. There's some things I did like about it, but for the most part, it was a very mediocre kind of middleware budget type of game.
Well, I thought this was interesting. Speaking of the woke topic, apparently they held a vote for the community where they asked fans, because the big controversy with Oblivion Remastered was the Type 1, Type 2 body type selection. Instead of male versus female, I guess in the original it was male versus female. I don't remember the original, to be honest.
I do.
Only Elder Scrolls that I played through religiously was Daggerfall and Skyrim. I skipped Morrowind and Oblivion, not for any particular reason, I just didn't play them. And the developers of Lords of the Fallen held this vote, which would you prefer? And out of 49,000 votes, 88% said they preferred the male-female option. And they came out and said, as a player-first studio, we will be updating Lords of the Fallen and future titles in the series accordingly. So here you have a developer. I don't know if you would call them AAA. But
no, definitely not AAA in our understanding of it in terms of like a high budget type of game. But
yeah,
obviously this is good. I mean, we come at this from a perspective of there are two genders. There's two sexes only. So having this ridiculous goofy body type 1 or 2 or A or B or Q or X or whatever is just absurd.
Yeah,
and it's pandering to a
very small percentage.
to a very small percentage of people, which to this kind of this delusional idea that sex is somehow malleable.
And if you don't believe
this is
us,
a good
I mean,
move.
here are the poll results. You don't believe us that it's a small percentage. The results are right here. We're not the only ones who think this.
Yeah, case
88%
closed.
of
I mean,
49,000,
case closed, right?
8.7% chose body type A and B, and then 3.4 said none of the above. Which, whatever, troll voting, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
And to follow up on that too, to sneak in another story in here, just kind of sideways here. Nexus Mods actually decided to go back on their
They
ban
did.
of they did of the mod
Good.
that changed the body type into male and female. So
Are they going to do
everyone's
that with
kind
the
of
Spider-Man games?
probably not. I mean, but who knows? I mean, going forward, it's possible. I mean, it seems like there's been a there's I mean that's beyond the scope of this video, but there's definitely been a paradigm shift in the this perspective, this worldview, whatever you want to call it, is receding.
Yeah.
So it's losing ground on all fronts.
Well, you know what? I don't even. I wouldn't say it's beyond the scope of this video because you made the point with regards to polygon. I mean, this is just again, and I just realized Kotaku's headline says, "Oh, up here it says Polgion." They should probably update that. I guess it's right down here. Anyway, yep, you're next, Kotaku. But you touched on it with regards to Polygon. You reap what you sow. The fans are not are not fans of this crap, and it's highly rejected. And you see it with all of these studio closures, all these layoffs.
Yeah,
There's a reason why it's happening.
yeah, it's the truism of go woke, go broke. I mean, it's kind of become this truism that's become been proven correct over and over and over again. Um, I know I'm dying here. I was sick this week, so much to the delight of Polygon writers, I am dying here of a cough, but getting better slowly but surely. But yeah, no, I agree. I think we can see this as sort of a victory in a way. I don't think anyone's going to miss Polygon. Good riddance as far as I care. Yeah, I don't wish suffering on people. I'm not some cackling Saturday morning cartoon villain. That's misery qua misery. But at the same time, I know these people would gladly be cackling and giggling away if the shoe is on the other foot here. So
Yeah.
glad to see that they're not going to be polluting the gaming space with their nonsense anymore.
Yeah, good riddance, Polygon, ripping pepperoni. And then getting into more layoffs, EA has cut 300 positions, including about 100 at Respawn, and cancels the next Titanfall game. Now, were you a fan of Titanfall?
To be honest, I never really played it.
Okay.
I heard great things about Titanfall 2, but I never really played it.
So I've played the first one, and the first one was a pretty fun concept, but it was an online-only game. And then I never played Titanfall 2, but I heard the campaign in that was pretty solid. I did buy it, I think, on Xbox months ago for like $1. So it's one of those games where it's like, you know what, finally, maybe I'll do that for the channel in memoriam of the canceled Titanfall game where I played through some of Titanfall 2 and see what it's all about. But yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice to see. I mean, like I said, I never really touched it, so it'd be nice to see somebody give it a shot.
But yeah, the roughly 100 impacted jobs at Respawn include individuals in development, publishing, and QA workers on Apex Legends, as well as smaller groups of individuals working on the Jedi team and 2 canceled incubation projects, one of which we reported back in March and the other of which was, per Bloomberg's report, a new Titanfall game. These cuts follow a number of other layoffs over the last few years at EA, including the elimination of 50 jobs at BioWare in 2023. Now, I wonder why BioWare would have had some cuts. There was a game recently. I'm drawing a blank on it. There were a couple of games from BioWare, actually, within the last couple of years that have been flops.
Well, the big notable one, of course, was Dragon Age.
But I think that was a 2024 release.
Correct. Yeah, the Veilguard, which was initially reported to be like, oh, it's selling well, but then of course, inevitably I think the the lead behind it left, and a bunch of people left, and it was actually a big flop. It was it was one of the big woke flops of last year.
Well, when you have one of the monster
plenty of those.
races coming out as non-binary, and again, it's just one of
Yeah,
those.
I think that's the only thing anyone's going to remember about that game. I think, but yeah, I mean, in terms of like looking at these losses, I mean, I'm not an Apex fan, so I don't really care. And how many people do you really need working on a live service game like that? The Star Wars Jedi games, I could take it or leave it. I don't really think they're all that compelling. But
I keep being told that I would like them because they are Dark Souls adjacent, and for me, it's just like, yeah, but I'm just not into Star Wars anymore. That brand is dead to me.
well, the other kind of off topic tangent here, the Revenge of the Sith re-release that just happened over
Did
this
really
past
well.
weekend here. Did really well, yeah. 20th anniversary Revenge of the Sith. I went to go see it with
$42 million for a 20-year-old movie from a trilogy that really was not all that great.
but I mean, it was. I mean, it was the high point of that trilogy. It was very enjoyable. I had a good time seeing it again with a friend, and yeah. So I mean, so Star Wars, most of Star Wars is dead, but there's signs of life in there. I think it's funny that this is the not only is it the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, it's the 10th anniversary of Force Awakens, and no one cares. No one even mentions that. No one even thought about that until I just mentioned it right now.
Wow, has it been 10 years since that movie came out?
I believe it's been 10 years. I'm going to double check it right now just to be 100% safe.
I think you're right. I'm willing to say you're right.
2015. Yeah.
Wow.
And no one cares. No one cares. No one even thought about that until right now. It's not shown in any theaters. There's no 10th anniversary party for it. No one cares that's new Star Wars is a complete failure.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped paying attention to Star Wars after the last movie I saw with you, which was The Last Jedi. And, like, it's safe to say that Spectre here is far and above the bigger Star Wars fan between the two of us. He's got a whole Star Wars room. It's very cool. And I enjoyed it just as a passerby with regards to the movies, the original movies, of course, and the early video game iterations. But after The Last Jedi, I was done. Even I understood that they had no respect for the legacy of Star Wars.
Yeah, they wanted to destroy it and replace it with something completely different. And, but yeah, we won't get off on a huge Star Wars tangent.
We'll stay on task.
We could talk about the new show with the lesbian scenes and the rape scenes in it. There's rape in Star Wars now.
Okay,
did you know that? Yeah, there's rape in Star Wars now.
Well, I remember when Luke raped Leia in the original trilogy. I'm just kidding. That never happened. By the way, YouTube, we don't condone rape of any kind, and we don't think it's a joking matter. It's very naughty.
Yeah, that's right. I have to use the newspeak. It's SA, right? That's what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah, where you bleep it out.
I have to use newspeak.
Yeah,
I have to use newspeak. It's not double plus good of me to say that.
Yeah, well, good thing we're not monetized yet. We'll wait till it becomes an issue in the event that we become monetized. Well, that does it for EA. Not a whole lot to talk about here. I don't know if this is like a reap what you sow situation with Respawn, because from what I understand, the Jedi games are very popular. They do really well. They're generally well received. I don't know of any big controversies with them, but I don't really follow it. And I know Titanfall was a big one where a lot of people were clamoring at the opportunity to play a new Titanfall game. So this is unfortunate.
I mean, they're somewhat successful. I think the if you wanted to call anything like a controversy in them, it was more so just the Deborah Wilson being in them, just how ubiquitous she is and everything. So
yeah.
That's not really a controversy though.
Right. So, I mean, this is a situation. It's like, okay, well, we'll see what Respawn does, or maybe EA's decided, no, Apex Legends is making all the money for us, and that's all we need. So, now, the big headline of the week: Microsoft has raised the price of all Series consoles, and Xbox games confirmed to hit $80 this holiday. And I know you're asking yourself, what games? Because I'm asking the same question. What games are going to be $80?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what's coming out at the end of the year for them.
I know the Gears of War E-Day was.
Is that going to be this year? I don't know. I don't think.
I don't
so.
know if it's this year. I think Fable is still slated to come out this year.
I doubt that.
But you got those are the two big titles. Those are the two big titles, and I mean, really, Fable we haven't seen anything on really. I know people personally who are excited for Fable, and I'm like, why? You haven't seen anything on it. We saw a couple of CGI trailers, and in the most recent trailer that I'm aware of, you had a couple of gameplay scenes with the character walking through whatever town, but
and they really tried to make her like the most unappealing, ugly avatar they possibly could. And
I don't understand. I mean, it's an RPG, and if it's going to have a character creator mode, why would you do that? Like, if Microsoft, if they want this to do well, and they likely don't care because of Game Pass, but it's just like you could pick. Shit, I'd settle for a reimagining of the modern Tomb Raider games. Of a character model like that. Where you don't have a whole lot of big assets, if you know what I mean, but you still have a somewhat good-looking character. You just have the mystery meat machine generating whatever the hell is being shown in the Fable marketing.
Yeah, or just make a generic like white guy. I mean, it's like
they can't do that.
It's like, come on,
No, you can't have that. White people are the devil. But apparently the prices are have increased big time. So here's a breakdown of all the prices. So the Xbox Series S base model is now $379.99, and that is up from $299.99. The Series S 1 terabyte is $430, up from $350. Series X Digital is now $550, up from $450. Series X, the base Series X, is now $600, up from $500. The 2 terabyte Galaxy Edition is now $730, up from the $600. And then the controllers are increasing too. The core controllers are $65. The color wireless controllers are $70, so that's a $5 increase on both. You have, they say, a special edition Xbox controller, so I'm imagining that means like any special edition wireless controller is $80 now. And then you have your limited editions. What's the difference? I don't know. Those are $90 versus $80. Your Series 2 controller, the core version, so that's without like the extra pads and bells and whistles, that is now $150, up from $140. The complete Series 2 controller is now $200 versus $180, which I thought that the Series 2 controller came out at $200 initially, but I could be wrong. The standard stereo headset is $65, and the wireless headset is $120, up from $110. So the accessories, my honest opinion, is not that much of an increase. And then the biggest thing is we're going to get $80 games from first-party Microsoft games, which will include Call of Duty. Right here, the new Fable's been reportedly delayed to 2026. I didn't even realize
as expected. Yeah.
Perfect Dark reboot. I didn't know that was a thing. I probably did, but
it's very forgettable. I keep forgetting about it too.
Oh, you know what? I do remember that trailer. It was god awful. That was
Yeah,
a terrible trailer.
she was very square jawed and masculine
Yeah.
looking, and
Yes. Yes. I remember that.
we already had a bad Perfect Dark follow up game too, of Perfect Dark Zero. Do we need another one?
Right. I don't know. Apparently, Hideo Kojima's OD. I feel like I remember this.
That was that weird looking one where people
Oh,
were like,
yeah,
yeah.
yep.
Was that the Hunter Schafer one?
Is it Hunter Schafer? I don't know.
I think it is.
Well, that's a hard pass. Kojima hasn't done anything good since Metal Gear Solid 3, so I'll walk that back a bit. He hasn't done anything good since Peace Walker. Peace Walker was a solid game. But yeah, we will now be seeing 2 price hikes on software within a span of a couple of years. I do blame Nintendo for this, and I say that as the resident Nintendo fan.
You don't blame Donald Trump?
No, I don't blame Donald Trump. I don't blame tariffs. I think that's a crock because it's an arbitrary number. You know, it's if you don't want to have to.
You want my hot take on all this? I think this does not matter at all. I don't think anybody cares.
No,
Here's why.
People will pay for it if they want it, and if they don't want it, they won't pay for it.
I think from Microsoft's I'll start from Microsoft's perspective. I'll talk about it from the consumer's perspective really quick too.
Okay.
From Microsoft's perspective, if you look at their most recent, this is going back not too long ago. We just had their most recent financial report. Their services. Let's see. Okay, Microsoft's gaming revenue was up 5% year over year for January for March quarter. So their gaming revenue has actually gone up 5%.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm dying here. Content and services sales increased 8% as well too. Excuse me. Coughing up a lung here.
Drink some water, man. We're doing it live, okay? The people
we're doing it live,
watching.
yeah. Right. But yeah, so in other words, revenue is up, sales are up, hardware sales are down. So their hardware sales are down in the most recent financial report. And then now they're having this price increase. What do you think is going to happen to hardware sales? Probably going to go down even further. I don't think they care. I think they're focused on they're essentially become hardware agnostic at this point. They don't really care about, and this kind of makes sense when you think about Microsoft as a whole in their history. They've always been a software company. They're not a hardware company. They've always been a software company. They are focused on selling games, on selling services, and subscription fees, and all that stuff. That's what they're focused on. I don't think they really care how many Xboxes they sell. Yeah. Would they love where they sold 200 million Xbox Series X's and everyone was using that as their primary platform and they were getting the full cut of their much healthier cut of the revenue? I'm sure they would love that. That's not the world that they live in though. So I think that they, from their perspective, they don't want to lose money on hardware. So they're going to jack up the prices on the hardware that they have here. They don't want to take a loss on them. Because they don't really care, I think, at the end of the day, how many Xboxes they sell. Go think about their marketing. Look at even their marketing. What's the big, the most recent, big marketing push they had? This is an Xbox. Right. Everything is an Xbox. Your phone is an Xbox. Your TV's an Xbox. Your Steam Deck, everything's an Xbox now. Yeah. That's the whole idea of it. It's not about, okay, we need to get this arbitrary number of Xbox Series X's sold so we can have so we can own PlayStation or own Nintendo. It's about just, hey, let's get our service on as many devices as humanly possible. Let's keep, it seems like they're being somewhat successful with it. Sales are increasing still, most recent report. I think that's their strategy. I don't think they really care, if a few less people buy an Xbox Series X or a Series S. I don't think that really matters to them. As long as they're engaged with the service and the Game Pass and still buying their games, whether that's on PlayStation, whether they're buying it for Steam, whether they're buying it on Nintendo, whether they're going to go see the Minecraft movie. I think that's what they care about at the end of the day. I don't think they really care how many Xboxes they sell.
And I don't think that's much of a hot take. I think that's been the general writing on the wall, honestly, for the past couple of years.
Well, I think people are acting like this is like some some grand like horrible thing. I don't think it really matters. I think from Microsoft's perspective, I don't think they really care, and I think from a consumer perspective, I mean, if you're unless you're like a die-hard Xbox loyalist, which I mean at this point, if you are, I mean, like why? And also, let's imagine you are though. You already have a Series X, so what do you care if the price increases?
Right.
So, I mean, from a consumer perspective, it doesn't really matter. You can play your Xbox library on a computer. You can play it, you can play the same games on your PlayStation. You can play the same games on your phone.
You can do it on
with a
your
backbone
TV.
on it.
Like, it
On your
literally
TV.
is. I did try it on my TV, and I will honestly say I no longer have any form of, like, Game Pass, but I did try it on my TV, and it worked. It worked fine. I ran a Call of Duty match on my TV, and would it have run better on my actual Series X? Probably, but it did well enough. And so I know they have a deal with Samsung specifically with regards to launching Xbox through Samsung televisions. You could probably do with other televisions, but I if memory serves correctly, they had a specific deal with Samsung about that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you can literally play it anywhere. I'm not attached to Xbox, and all this does for me, my Halo Edition Series X valuation has now gone up. So I'm contemplating at this point maybe getting rid of my Halo Series X, make a pretty penny on it, and call it a day.
Yeah, it's a good time to flip stuff, right? I mean, it's a good opportunity to flip some of this stuff.
But yeah, I do blame Nintendo on this with their, what did Doug Bowser say specifically? I want to quote him. Oh god, Bowser on variable pricing. That's the term he used. So we will never get, solidified pricing on Nintendo titles, at least. And I'll admit, I'm a sucker. I did decide to get the Switch 2. And being more of a sucker, I'll be getting, like, the Switch 2 versions of Zelda, to play those games as they were truly meant to be played.
Will you get the DLC on top of it too?
As far as I'm aware, the DLC for Breath of the Wild won't be available on Switch 2. I don't know how that's going to work. I'll be honest. There hasn't been any, like... I know it doesn't come...
I thought you pay like $20 extra, you get DLC.
Right, so I know it doesn't come with the DLC, but my question is, will the DLC for Breath of the Wild be upscaled the same as the core game for Switch 2? Whether it's through a digital upgrade... I mean, it'd have to be a digital upgrade for the DLC. So that I'm not entirely certain. I own the DLC on Breath of the Wild. And Mario Kart World at $80. That's intense. And I think what this does is, you think of games for the future. Microsoft has now said that you will be getting $80 first party games. There's a game that is supposed to be coming out this year. It hasn't been confirmed otherwise. You might have heard of it. Grand Theft Auto 6. I do believe that game at its base will be a $100 game. And
that's been the rumor.
I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm willing to say no. I love the Grand Theft Auto games. I had a lot of fun with GTA 5. Am I disappointed in Rockstar in that we haven't had a true new Grand Theft Auto experience in 12 years? Yes. But GTA 6 does look like a pretty game. In terms of, its graphics, we haven't seen anything on it. Rockstar is notoriously known for keeping their cards close to their chest, but I do believe that will be a $100 game at its base at launch. And that said, I don't know how long I'll stay with the hobby if games will be going up to $100. And what I do resent is, I guess you can call them naysayers, but everybody who's been trying to combat the complaints with, well, when a console or a game released back in the 90s, if you take inflation into account, those games would actually be, $120 for a Donkey Kong 64. Fuck that. It wasn't $120 back then. It was $60 for Donkey Kong 64. And I don't accept that.
Well, they're talking about inflation and stuff like that.
I know they're talking about inflation, but it's not like people's salaries have been inflating drastically over the course of the last 30 years. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I guess I'd have to find out what a person in my position was making 30 years ago versus now, but I can't imagine it's that much more.
Let's see. So what would a janitor make?
Custodian?
30. Yeah.
Okay. With a pension plan? All right. So
Pension plan, low performance reviews, we'll say. So.
mid performance reviews, okay? I'm there every day. Not always on time, but I am there.
Looks like you'd be able to afford a Happy Meal. That's about it. So,
well, that comes into that. That's useful when they have the big Pokemon events and I get free Pokemon cards. Okay, so who's the sucker now? But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with the Switch 2. I'm confident the Switch 2 may be my last console I purchase. I'll admit I like my PS5. I have a good sized library for my PlayStation 5, and I've been playing through a decent amount of games on PS5. Xbox could die. I don't care. I don't care about Xbox. I do have games from 360 era, the original Xbox era, Xbox One, and the series that I can go back and play. Those are games I care about, but I have no loyalty to Xbox anymore. Halo is dead. Halo was the only thing that kept Xbox alive. And I think Microsoft has all but abandoned Halo, which is very disappointing. So
I think everybody moved on and wrote off Xbox after 360, after the end of 360.
I will say we're getting some pretty solid stuff from Nintendo for the Switch 2. We're getting Kirby Air Riders 2, Metroid Prime 4, a new Donkey Kong game, Mario Kart World. And those are all games that should be coming out this year. And then we're most assuredly going to get some type of 3D Mario. Obviously, we're going to get a new Zelda. So I think the Switch 2 will have some viability with it. But my biggest issue is the software price increase. Console price increases, I don't care about. You want a more powerful console, you're going to pay more for it. That's just reality. Or even if it's a PC. If you want a powerful PC, you're going to pay for it. Like that's just how it works. What I'd be real curious about is if the tariff situation is to be true, how that's impacting PC parts or even pre-built PCs. If we're going to see a lot of price increases on those. You may know better than I, but...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not... I'm not in the market for like a new GPU, for example, right now. That's the main thing that you got to focus on, of course, when you're building something. But I mean, I would say, I did like a casual look today on stuff. A friend of mine's building a PC right now. You can find stuff out there. You can find, decent cards, even without, a whole lot of, research or checking like in stock websites, things like that. I found some decent stuff for, a fairly reasonable price. You get a pretty decent card for around $500 or under with a little bit of effort. I don't think it's like a horrible, horrible situation right now. If I really put my mind to it, I could get a card probably within a week or two, and not have to pay some kind of ridiculous price. Assuming you're getting like a normal tier card, you're not going for like some crazy Rolls Royce, video card that you don't need, nobody really needs, unless you're just like a streamer trying to show off. Um,
Well, we're at the 5000 series for Nvidia cards now, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Like nobody needs like a 5090 or even a 4090, which is discontinued now. But I mean, nobody really needs those kind of cards. I mean, you're fine. I have a 3070 right now, and it's doing just fine.
I have a
I'm playing
1080.
Oblivion.
I need an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely do. But you're not really on PC gaming. But
No.
it's yeah, from my perspective on this whole thing, like I said, I wrote off Xbox as a brand, 15 years ago at this point. So, it's PC all the way. I bought my last console a long time ago at this point. That was, I'm done.
I think it was Switch, wasn't it? I think you bought a Switch more recently than a PlayStation 5.
Well, I mean, that was a gift for somebody. Does that count?
I would say so. Yeah, you used your money to pay for it, right?
I did, yes. I mean, but I mean, I'm not using it. I didn't play the device. I was a gift I gave to somebody. But in terms of like, a system for myself, the last console I bought was a PlayStation 5, which I essentially got a full refund on because I got the full amount back that I paid for it when I sold it to somebody because it was still scarce at the time.
And we know that person, and what a sucker.
No, I feel bad for that person because apparently it stopped working sometime after he got it, like not too long after that. But I hopefully he was able to. Hopefully he was able to replace it or whatever. But so maybe I kind of lucked out in that situation.
So, given the news that we've seen, we got layoffs, we got these price increases, and the tariff situation is being blamed for a lot of this stuff. Like, where do you see gaming as a medium within the next 5 years? Are we approaching the brink of the new gaming depression, similar to what we've seen in the early 80s?
I think the only option is to reject gaming and return to Monkey. That's what we got to do at this point. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no.
Right. Well, we're gonna end it there. Everybody have a great night. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Have a great night.
So it seems. No, I think. There definitely is a contraction going on with it. I don't know if we're going to have like a crash or anything crazy like that. I mean, it is worrying that I think a lot of people just don't have money anymore. They don't have. I mean, well, they do and they don't. They don't have a lot of disposable income anymore. They're looking for deals. I think that as companies keep jacking up the prices, $80 for a game, 1,000 DLC items, we're going to charge you more for controllers, we're going to charge you $100 for Grand Theft Auto, we're going to charge you this, and this. You have to have all these subscription fees for this. I think people are just kind of like, eventually something's got to give. They can't just keep affording all this, and I think we're already seeing that I mean, obviously Xbox's most recent revenue report was still kind of positive when you look at it, other than hardware sales. But I think over time, that the hobby just isn't going to grow like it did at one point. That's my perspective on it. I mean, gaming's always going to be here, of course, but
you think it's going to always be here
in some form or another? Yeah.
Okay.
It might look different, just as it looked very different in the 2000s than it did in the early 90s, which looked very different from gaming in the late 70s.
What I'm saying is the hobby itself, it'll remain. Are you referring to like people may resort to the more retro gaming, or do you think they'll still subscribe no pun intended, to the modern era of gaming? Like,
I don't think you're going to see some, unless there's some sort of apocalyptic event and the industry is completely destroyed wholesale. I don't see people just completely going back to old games.
Okay.
I just don't see that happening. I think people, and people still clearly are buying new games that they enjoy. Even just remasters of older games are coming back as well too with more modern graphics and features like we just saw with Oblivion. Oblivion is doing very, very well.
Yeah.
In that Expedition 33 game looks like it's doing pretty well as well too. That's a brand new game, brand new IP. So people are still clearly buying games. But I think that it's just we're in a world now where it's not 2018 anymore, where people had more money and we didn't have all the stuff that we went through and the all this crazy inflation and all these other concerns going on. I just think people just have less spending money for things, and they're just looking to. They're not going to be running to to shell out more money, like $80 per game. I think people are going to look for more deals. I mean, that's just how I see it. I know the Switch 2 just sold out and everything, but yes, so did the Wii U. The Wii U sold out at launch too. Every console always sells out at launch.
Did the Wii U sell out at launch?
Yes, it did.
I find that hard to believe.
There was a time where there was optimism.
I'll take your word at it.
There was a time where there was optimism for the Wii U. People were intrigued, cautiously optimistic about it, myself included. And it took time for us to realize, like, okay, the games are not coming. This big tablet thing is a giant, freaking albatross that I have to carry around. I hate it. I don't want to use it.
Yeah.
It took time for people to realize, like, hey, this is not what it was cracked up to be. Something that's gone terribly wrong here. It wasn't apparent from day one,
Yeah.
But yeah.
I will say with regards to Nintendo, I think they were smart with the Switch 2 and just basically giving us the Switch Pro, which is essentially what it is. It's the Switch Pro.
It's a safe system, but although at the same time, I feel like it's much like the Switch, it's very underpowered, and I don't know if people are going to rush out to upgrade to it right away. I don't know if there's compelling software to upgrade to right away. I don't know if it's going to be something where people are just going to be dying to get it, other than just the hardcore enthusiasts.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you to a point. I mean,
do we think it's going to sell as much as the Switch 1 did? I don't know. I'd be kind of surprised.
I don't think it will. I really don't think it will. And it just based that off of Nintendo, historically speaking. They have one big banger of a system, and then they have a generation where it's kind of a lull, right? So you had Super Nintendo, that did great. Nintendo 64, very popular, but it didn't sell as well as Super Nintendo. Then you had the Nintendo DS, which, ran away with it. And I don't know if you want to count handhelds in this. Then you had the GameCube, which didn't do so great. Then you had the Wii. Then you had the 3DS, which didn't do so great. Then you had the Wii U. Then you had the Switch. So I think it's a constant ebb and flow for Nintendo, where I think Switch 2 will be... I think it'll be a success, but it will not be comparable to the Switch 1's success.
I think to make the allegory or comparison, 3DS is to DS sales as Switch 2 is to Switch 1 sales. I think that's going to be my comparison. I think it's going to be like a 3DS where it's.
I don't think it'll be as bad as the 3DS sales, but I'll agree with you.
I don't know if it's going to be as low as the I don't know if it's going to be as low as the 3DS sales, but I mean the DS was a phenomenon. It's hard to overstate how popular that was, how well it sold. It's still
and you had Super Mario 64 DS as a launch title, right? Like, was that not a launch title for the DS?
That was a launch title, yeah.
Yeah, fuck. Everybody who had an N64 was... I know that's why I bought a DS, was so I could play Super Mario 64 DS. Like, you remade...
Oh, yeah, it was mind-blowing. It's like, I can play one of the greatest games ever made, on the go. It's like, it was mind-blowing.
In fact, I think that is the only game that I played through its entirety of on the DS. I know they did like a Yoshi's Island DS, which was not the same as the Super Nintendo version. It was a comparable game, but it just didn't have the same feel for me.
The DS, I mean, not to get off on a big tangent on the DS, but the DS had a pretty good, library overall. You had a lot of decent stuff on there. Whether it was even just, Nintendo stuff, Pokemon, some good Mario stuff on there as well. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in there, good RPG games and stuff. I mean, it was actually a pretty decent library. A lot of shovelware too, but a good library overall.
Right. So I agree with you. Switch 2 will not come anywhere close. What are we at? Probably 150 million units of Switch 1, maybe more. I think
it won't even beat the PS2.
It will. It will. Let's see here. Nintendo Switch units sold. We gotta have something recent, right? 202. No. 120. Why is my 5 not working?
There was like 1,700 DS titles. It's crazy. What
am I looking at here? So it looks like we're at... Well, that's Reddit. I don't really trust them.
Can you believe that? 1,700 DS games? Over 1,700.
1,700? God.
A lot of garbage, but some really good stuff in there too.
So as of December of 2024, we're over 150 million units. I think Switch 1
Gonna be close.
It'll be close. If they are projected to sell an additional 11 million units over the course of 2025. Because Sony somehow found an additional 20 million PlayStation 2s that were sold that weren't initially recorded. I wonder who's behind that. But either way, the Switch 1 was a big success. I would predict the Switch 2 would comfortably, at the peak of its success toward the end of its lifespan, I think it'll reach 100 million units. I think it will.
I think that's a fair estimate for it,
Plus, it's Nintendo. You got a new Donkey Kong game. I mean, like I said, you got a lot of bangers that have been announced for the launch window coming out this year. I think Metroid Prime 4 will be a big system seller. And of course, you'll have your Switch 1 players who will just opt to get the Switch 1 version, sure. But a lot of people will say, I want to play it on the Switch 2. I want that 60 frames. But you got Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong, Metroid Prime 4, and Kirby Air Riders 2. And that's just within this year alone. So I think there is a reason to get a Switch 2. If you're a console gamer, it's not like the Wii U, where you just really didn't have a whole lot to choose from. You had Batman Arkham City, Wii U version, and Mario... What was that? Mario Brothers Wii U. That was it. And Nintendo Land. Whoever bought that, those poor souls. So, pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to take the opposite of you. I think we are on the precipice of maybe another gaming crash. A lot of people are rejecting a lot of modern audience crap in video games. And with these consoles being as expensive as they are, a lot of people are going to come to a realization, to your point, where they don't have a lot of excess income, that video games are a luxury and not a necessity. And so they may opt to not participate. So Will it happen this generation?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think people are going to go like straight back to retro, but I think people will find their own like their own lane that they enjoy. Like, hey, I'm just going to play my live service game or two, and maybe I'll buy like a cosmetic here and there, but for the most part, I'm not going to be going out and buying $80-$90 game that's brand new every other week.
Sure. Very interesting times. We're approaching the dark times. That's to be sure. But what are we at? We're approaching an hour here for this video. Any final thoughts from you, Spectre?
No, I mean, like I said, I think we could kind of leave off of some optimism here. It is good to see Polygon fall. That's good. I don't have any love lost for the EA, layoffs either. I mean, who really cares anymore? The only mildly interesting thing for that EA was supposed to produce was a Dead Space 2 remake, which was canceled. So
yeah,
don't care. The only thing they have coming up that's going to raise even a slight eyebrow for me would be the next Battlefield game, maybe, which they've really burned that bridge. I mean, it's going to have to be like a transcendent experience for me to even consider that game anymore.
Yeah.
So, good riddance there as well. And like I said, the Xbox price increase, I don't think really matter for anybody. It's something for people to bellyache over on Twitter, but I don't think they really matter. And yeah, no, that's kind of my take on them all there.
My final thoughts are, good riddance, Polygon. EA, that's par for the course. I don't have an opinion about missing out on a Titanfall game. And I agree with you with the Microsoft price increases. They've embraced the subscription service, and that's where they make their money. So we'll see what happens there. I think the Switch 2 will be the defining moment in terms of whether or not the hobby itself will continue to thrive. I am excited for the Switch 2. I'm looking forward to working the midnight release for that. I think that'll be a fun experience. There's a lot of excitement for it. And I think we'll get quality content, but my biggest issue is the software prices. $100 games. Am I going to pay $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6 or $80 for Mafia Old Country, which looks like a far better game to me, in my opinion. More interesting. So we'll see. Obviously, I don't want to see the hobby to die, but hopefully these companies figure it out. And at the very least, if they're charging those prices, you better fucking make it worth it. I paid $70 for Black Myth Wukong digital, and I am extremely against digital games. I got every fucking penny worth out of it. So if you're going to charge me $80, $90, $100 on video games, you better make damn sure that game is worth it for me, or I'll fucking return it. I don't give a shit.
There you go. I mean, I think my only regret is I didn't get a Switch 2 just to flip it, because I'm sure people are going to be.
I'll sell you a Switch 2. I'll sell you a Switch 2 for $700, and then you can flip it for $800. You'll still make money.
I don't want one at all. It's just for money making purposes.
That's gonna do it for this podcast, right? Podcast, videocast, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I am Rorschach with the Game Reactionists. If you stuck along with us this far, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're aware of when we upload new content. With me, I have
a very, very sick Spectre.
Sick Spectre. That's your new tag.
Just barely hanging in there. But yeah, no, thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys on the flip flop.